Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I returned to my lake house for peace. What I found was a stranger living on my yacht, claiming it was hers. My gate was gone, my dock hijacked, and the cops thought I was the trespasser. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft, fraud, and the start of a war. I pulled up the gravel road just past 10 on a Friday night, my headlights cutting through the fog that always rolled off Lake Haywood like clockwork after sundown. It had been nearly 3 weeks since I last visited my lake house, a modest cedar-shingled cabin tucked into a secluded cove I bought after selling my startup. Peace and silence, far from boardrooms and bullshit. I used to call this place my sanctuary. That night, it felt like I was driving into a nightmare. First red flag, the gate. It wasn't mine. I sat there, engine idling, staring at a sleek digital keypad mounted on a wrought iron gate that definitely hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. My gate was wooden with rusted hinges and a padlock I'd replaced myself. Now I was looking at something out of a suburban development. Clean. New. Wrong. I killed the engine and got out, the crunch of gravel under my boots echoing louder than it should have. I walked up, checked the keypad. No labels, no branding. The fence stretched far to either side into the woods. Someone had put in serious effort and money to block off my own damn land. I took the back trail. There's a side path I use when hauling gear from the old shed. It snakes through the trees and lets out near the boathouse. Took me 15 minutes with a flashlight and more than a few curse words. As I came up over the ridge, I saw a glow between the trees. At first, I thought someone had installed garden lights. Then I smelled the barbecue. The scene that unfolded as I stepped onto the edge of my yard was surreal. There was a freaking tent pitched next to the fire pit I built myself 2 summers ago. Laundry flapped lazily on a line strung between 2 birch trees. A red SUV I didn't recognize was parked off the gravel, 2 tires in the flower bed. A Bluetooth speaker was playing some soft jazz I couldn't place. And in the air, the sweet, greasy scent of ribs. My heart thumped like it was trying to climb out of my chest. I moved slowly toward the dock. That's when I saw the flags. 2 HOA flags, those cheap nylon ones you'd expect to see outside a retirement community, were zip-tied to the posts at the top of the dock ramp. My dock, my wood, my bolts. One flag fluttered right next to the ladder leading up to my yacht. Seafox 325, 32 feet of sleek fiberglass and twin Yamaha engines bought in cash the day my acquisition deal closed. I treated her better than most people treat their spouses. And now, she looked like a floating motel. Beach towels hung over the rails, a camping umbrella shaded a plastic table, and 2 cheap lounge chairs sat on the deck like someone thought this was a lakeside Airbnb. I climbed the dock in silence, every step of the wood groaning beneath me. Halfway up, I heard laughter, a splash, a woman's voice. I rounded the last post, and there she was. A woman in her late 40s, tanned, bleach blonde, wearing a one-piece swimsuit and an open silk robe, stood barefoot on my boat's aft deck. She had a wine glass in hand and a Bluetooth earpiece in the other. She looked up, and for a split second we both froze. Then her expression flipped like a switch. "Who the hell are you?" she demanded, raising her chin like a high school principal catching a kid smoking behind the gym. "This is a private HOA recreational vessel. You're trespassing." I stared at her for a beat, trying to catch up. "What? Lady, this is my boat." She scoffed. "No, it's not. This boat belongs to Lake Haven HOA, and we're renting it this weekend. You're the one who's going to be in trouble." My laugh came out hollow, bitter. "You've got 30 seconds to get off my boat before this becomes a different kind of conversation." She didn't move, just narrowed her eyes. "You're making a huge mistake. I am the HOA." I pulled out my phone, unlocked the digital lock from my yacht's Bluetooth system, stepped aboard, and walked past her without a word. I opened the cabin door. It reeked of body spray, tequila, and burnt food. Inside, there were clothes strewn across the furniture, a bra on the helm chair, a half-eaten pizza on my map table, a cheap air mattress wedged awkwardly into the galley walkway. A teenager, maybe 17, sat on the sofa watching TikToks with his headphones in. He didn't even look up. There was also another woman passed out with one foot hanging off the V-berth, snoring. I stood in the middle of my own boat, fists clenched. Then I looked at the camera I'd hidden in the smoke detector. I tapped the app. The footage played. Day after day, night after night, The blonde woman, the kid, the other one, cooking, showering, partying, on my boat for over 2 weeks. I stepped out, walked past her again, and said, "You've got 30 minutes to pack your things. Then I'm calling the cops." She smiled, actually smiled. "I already did," she said sweetly, lifting her phone. "You're the one trespassing. I told them you broke into a property under HOA control. Let's see how they handle it." I didn't say another word. I just stood there, heart racing, watching her sip wine on my stolen boat while the sirens echoed faintly in the distance. The patrol car pulled up about 20 minutes later. By then, I was leaning against a piling on the dock, arms crossed, watching the trespassers make zero effort to leave. The woman, she introduced herself to the dispatcher as Karen Gillespie, of course, had made herself another drink. The teenager was now shirtless, doing push-ups on my deck, like this was some budget lakeside boot camp. The cruiser rolled up to the unfamiliar digital gate. I watched the officer get out, try the keypad, then mutter something into his radio. Karen perked up immediately. "Oh, thank God," she called out, waving from the dock. "Officer, over here." I jogged down the dock and took the trail around to the front, meeting the cop as he slipped through a gap someone had clearly cut into my own fence. The irony almost made me laugh. He was a tall guy, mid-40s, sunglasses even though it was practically dusk. His cruiser had a Haywood County Sheriff logo on the side. Local. That was a good start. "Evening," I said calmly, offering my ID. "You're here about a trespassing report?" He nodded slowly. "Mr. Ryan Strong." "That's me." He took the ID, looked it over, then glanced toward the dock. "Ma'am said you broke into her rental vessel." I didn't even flinch. "It's not a rental. It's my yacht, docked at my property, and that woman is a squatter who broke into it while I was gone." His brow furrowed. "Do you have proof of ownership?" "I have everything," I said, already pulling out my phone. I showed him the deed to the land, fully paid, legally registered under my name, then the marina permit, then the yacht registration with VIN and hull number matching the vessel 30 feet from where we stood, then the footage from the internal camera playing on loop, Karen climbing aboard at night, carrying groceries, her friend unlocking the cabin with a paperclip, the kid doing cannonballs into the lake from the stern swim deck. "I can also open the digital locks," I added, tapping the app. "They only recognize my credentials." The cop scratched the back of his neck. "Well, that's pretty solid." Just then, Karen came stomping up the path in flip-flops and a towel cape, a folder clutched in her hand like it was a subpoena. "Officer, don't let him manipulate you," she snapped. "This is Lake Haven HOA jurisdiction. I have the committee documents right here." He sighed audibly, already tired. Karen shoved the folder at him. "This is a printed copy of the rental agreement between Lake Haven HOA and a company called Aqua Escape Vacations, LLC. We've been managing recreational assets in the community for 2 years. That yacht was listed as an abandoned craft under our internal property reclaim program." The cop flipped through the papers. Standard font, no seals, no notarization. He raised an eyebrow. I cut in. "Aqua Escape doesn't exist. I checked the state business registry before you got here. That name has no tax ID, no filings. Total fiction." Karen didn't miss a beat. "It's a subsidiary of an umbrella group. It's perfectly legal. And anyway, under HOA charter rules, any unclaimed vessel docked in Lake Haven waters for more than 21 days is considered community property. We followed the proper process." "You're on my land," I growled. "My dock is not public. My slip permit is private. This isn't HOA-controlled water, and my lot isn't under any HOA covenant." Karen turned to the cop. "He's dangerous. He's harassing me. He showed up screaming, threatening to drag us off the boat. My son was scared for his life." That made me laugh, which probably didn't help. I took a slow breath, kept my voice even. Check the timestamp on the security footage. I walked in, unlocked the door, and said one sentence. Nobody was threatened. The only threat here is her pretending to own my property. The officer rubbed his temples. "All right, here's what we're going to do. I need both parties to stay put. I'll make a few calls to verify this registration." Karen smirked like she'd already won. I just nodded. 20 minutes later, the officer returned from his cruiser. He looked tired. "Well," he said, "Mr. Strong, your documents all check out. This yacht is indeed registered in your name, and the property deed shows your land is not within any HOA boundaries." Karen's mouth opened. That can't be right. Our boundary map. "The county's boundary map overrides whatever you printed off a Wix template, ma'am," the officer said flatly. "Now, that being said, this situation is messy. You've been living on someone else's property, and technically, that's trespassing. But you filed a report alleging ownership, so it's in a gray zone now." Karen brightened. "Exactly. That's why I called. We need a civil court to sort it." I stared at the officer in disbelief. "So you're saying I can't remove them?" "Not tonight," he said. "It's a civil dispute now. You'll need to file a complaint with the county court. If you remove them forcibly, it could backfire." I clenched my jaw. "So she can just keep squatting on my boat?" "For now," he said with a tired shrug. "Unless you want to risk an escalation. File your paperwork. Let the system handle it." I looked over at Karen. She sipped her drink and gave me a wink. I walked back to my car in silence, blood boiling, mind racing. If the system wanted me to play their game, fine. I'd play it harder. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. I sat in my truck outside the gate that didn't belong there, staring at the lake, hands clenched around a lukewarm cup of gas station coffee like it could hold the last shreds of my sanity together. My yacht was lit up like a floating holiday rental, with Karen and her teenage mutant Airbnb guests still lounging on board, laughing like they'd just conned a timeshare in Cabo. I wasn't just angry, I was insulted. This wasn't petty vandalism or some neighborly boundary dispute. This was an orchestrated heist of my home, my name, my rights. And the fact that she had the audacity to spin it into a civil misunderstanding told me one thing. She'd done this before. By sunrise, I was dialing numbers. First, Jesse Callahan, retired cop. Now a licensed private investigator with an office above a bait shop in town. He picked up on the second ring. Voice still thick with sleep and Marlboro Reds. "Jesse, it's Ryan Strong. I've got a trespasser. Actually, a whole damn occupation." By 8:30, we were sitting on the tailgate of my truck, reviewing footage on my phone while he made notes in a leather-bound notepad older than me. "You sure you didn't rent this out to anyone?" he asked. "Jesus, Jesse. Just covering my ass." "Okay, so she's been living there 17 days. 18 now." He nodded. "Then we might be looking at a pattern. You give me 48 hours. I'll dig." Next call. My attorney, Elise. Smart, mean when needed, and with a particular hatred for HOAs ever since one tried to fine her for painting her door red. By 10 a.m., Elise had already drafted and filed an emergency civil complaint in the county court for unlawful occupancy, fraud, trespassing, and defamation, since Karen had told the cops I threatened her. She even flagged it for priority hearing. While Elise handled the legal front, Jesse went hunting. And man, did he find snakes. By Sunday morning, I had a folder in my inbox labeled Lake Haven HOA, Dirty Business. Inside, a list of properties Karen had reclaimed in the past 2 years. A pontoon boat found unattended and repurposed as a party barge. A lakeside shed converted into a kayak storage unit and rented out for $75 a month. A vacant cabin where a family returned from Florida to find it sublet to 2 German backpackers with a phony rental agreement. She had a system. According to Jesse's notes, it went like this. Wait for a property to go unused. Declare it abandoned at an HOA board meeting. Draft fake committee reclamation documents. List it on small-time rental platforms through a shell company, like the fictional Aqua Escape Vacations, LLC. She collected rent payments via Venmo to an account linked to an email. The real kicker, she personally filed paperwork with the zoning office last year, attempting to claim lakefront easement authority for the HOA, without ever notifying the actual landowners. And somehow, no one stopped her. Jesse had found a few people who'd been burned by her before, but they either didn't have the money to fight or were intimidated into silence. Some even believed she was the law around here. Well, not anymore. That afternoon, I met Elise in her office downtown. She was already talking fast, typing faster. "We're hitting this from 3 angles," she said. 1. Civil lawsuit. 2. Formal complaint to the county zoning board and lake authority. 3. We go public. She's cocky because she's used to people backing down. You You're going to run her over." "I don't want to play this slow," I told her. "She's literally living on my boat." "She won't be for long." That night, I went back to the property. Karen was on the dock again, wrapped in another robe, drink in hand like she thought she owned sunset rights. She waved. "Any update from your lawyer, sweetie?" she called. I didn't answer. I just smiled, walked to the end of the dock, turned on the yacht's hull lighting system remotely, and pointed my phone camera at her. Silent, watching, documenting. By midnight, the first county inspector called me back, then a second, and by Monday morning, I had an official notice from the State Waterway Authority. The yacht was registered, fully active, and not subject to any HOA jurisdiction, a copy of which I forwarded to the sheriff's office with a single note. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a racket. By Tuesday, I was done playing defense. You push someone far enough, especially someone who built a company from a two-person garage into a $30 million acquisition, and eventually they stop reacting and start orchestrating. I'd gathered enough dirt to bury Karen Gillespie's little lakeside empire 10 feet under. Now I just needed to shine a light on the grave. I called a press conference. Well, a press conference might be generous. I called in a favor from a guy I knew at Channel 7, Diego Moreno, a local reporter who actually gave a damn about community stories. I sent him the whole file, property documents, surveillance footage, screenshots of Karen's fake LLC, testimonies from the other victims Jesse had dug up, and a breakdown of every cent she'd funneled into her Venmo account from unauthorized rentals. Diego's reply was short and sweet. "Be there Wednesday, bring coffee, we're blowing this up." That morning, I set up 3 folding chairs in front of my boat, the very one she was still squatting on, and hung a hand-painted sign behind them that read, "No, this isn't an Airbnb, it's a crime scene." Karen must have seen the setup from the dock. Around 10 a.m., she marched halfway up the gravel path in a pastel jumpsuit and oversized sunglasses, glaring at the camera crew like she was the one being wronged. "You have no right to film me on private property," she snapped. "Then get off it," I said without turning. Diego greeted her like a pro, polite, direct, with a camera already rolling. "Ma'am, care to comment on the documents showing you collected rental payments on a vessel that doesn't belong to you?" "I have nothing to say until I speak with my attorney," she barked. "Great," Diego said, smiling. "We'll make sure to include that in the story." By noon, a few curious neighbors from the Lake Haven area had gathered at the edge of my property, and to my surprise, 2 of them stepped forward. Jared and Malia Ross, a couple in their 50s, HOA members, and apparently former targets. She told us the cabin next door was city-owned. Jared explained to Diego, voice shaking slightly, said we could rent it for a season while our roof was getting replaced. Turned out it belonged to a retired veteran who hadn't even been notified. We left immediately when we found out. They backed up everything Jesse had uncovered, and more. Karen had even used HOA funds to pay for cleaning services on properties that didn't belong to them. She was laundering misappropriation through landscaping invoices. The best part? The sheriff who responded the night Karen called the cops, Officer Ruiz, happened to be off-duty and fishing nearby. He showed up when he saw the news van and quietly confirmed that, yes, the paperwork Karen presented looked extremely unofficial, and yes, the footage I showed him had convinced him something was fishy from the start. By the time the interview wrapped, Diego had enough for a full segment. But the real explosion came later that night. Channel 7 aired the story during the 6 o'clock news. It wasn't just about the yacht anymore. It was a deep dive into Lake Haven HOA's sketchy reclaim tactics, with Karen's face in full HD, standing on the deck of my boat like she was posing for a real estate listing. The community went ballistic. My inbox was flooded with emails. HOA members, neighbors, even a few former board members came out of the woodwork. Some apologized. Some offered help. Some were furious they'd been lied to for so long. And then came the summons. HOA Lake Haven announced an emergency board meeting scheduled for Friday night. I showed up early, wearing jeans and a t-shirt that said, "I don't pay HOA fees because I don't live in one." The meeting was tense. Karen was there, seated at the head of the table like nothing had happened, with a perfectly polished binder in front of her and a stone-cold glare that could sour milk. But she didn't control the room anymore. Member after member stood and asked questions. Why is there no paper trail for Aqua Escape LLC? Why did our landscaping budget triple last quarter? Why did the HOA pay to replace locks on a property we don't own? Karen kept deflecting, blaming clerical errors and miscommunication. She even claimed I had orchestrated a smear campaign against her. I stepped forward once the mic opened. "Let's be clear," I said, voice steady. "I don't live in this HOA. I never have. I bought my land specifically outside of its boundaries. And yet your president broke into my property, lived on my boat, rented it out to strangers, and called the police on me when I asked her to leave. That's not leadership. That's criminal trespass." There was a pause, and then applause, real, loud, cathartic. The board voted, and in a near unanimous decision, Karen was suspended from all HOA activities, pending an independent financial audit. She stood up slowly, collected her things, and muttered something under her breath as she left. I didn't catch it, but I caught her eyes. And for the first time since this circus started, she looked worried. By Saturday morning, it was clear Karen wasn't going down without dragging a few others with her. The story had spread beyond Channel 7. A couple of regional outlets picked it up, spinning headlines like HOA president accused of living rent-free on tech mogul's yacht and Lake Haven property scandal. Is this the worst HOA in New Mexico? Suddenly, the entire town was watching. But the deeper we dug, the more we realized this wasn't just a petty squabble over dock rights. It was organized theft, plain and simple, and someone had helped her do it. Elise, my attorney, was already knee-deep in the paperwork when she stormed into her office where I was waiting, coffee in one hand, a bundle of printed emails in the other. "You're going to love this," she said, tossing the stack in front of me. At the top, an email thread between Karen and Mitchell Gillespie, the current mayor of Haywood, and, as it turned out, her second cousin. "He's been ghostwriting her internal committee rulings," Elise said. "And check this. Look at the timestamp. This email with a template easement claim was sent 3 days before you came back to the lake." My stomach dropped. He knew. He more than knew, she said. He helped her lay legal cover. Now, here's where it gets even more rotten. While Elise was putting together a second formal complaint to the state zoning board, Diego, the journalist, texted me. "City Hall's trying to freeze the complaint. Whispers say mayor called in a favor to the county clerk." And just like that, the county zoning office temporarily suspended my case for review of jurisdictional authority. Translation: they were stalling. Someone upstairs had hit the brakes, but they weren't counting on Jesse. Our PI had been digging deeper, following the money trail from Aquascape Vacations, Karen's fake rental shell, and found something golden. A new company registration filed 2 weeks prior under the name Lakeshore Public Use Initiative, with an address that traced back to Mitchell Gillespie's re-election campaign headquarters. Elise grinned when she saw it. "We've got him." On Monday morning, she filed a formal ethics violation report with the State Attorney General's office, attaching everything: the emails, the LLC ties, and a lovely color-coded map of Karen's reclaimed zones layered over GIS data showing they were all privately owned. It was meticulous, ruthless, and bulletproof. But that wasn't the only bombshell we dropped that week. Late Tuesday evening, I got an email from someone claiming to be a concerned HOA board member. No name, just a PDF attachment titled Property Transfer Authorization. I opened it. It was a forged letter written on fake HOA letterhead, allegedly signed by me, declaring that I had granted temporary custodianship of Seafox 325 to Lake Haven HOA for community recreational purposes. Dated 2 days before I had even returned to the property. The signature was laughably bad, copied and pasted from a scanned marina permit I'd submitted months earlier. Still, it was dangerous. This was the kind of thing that could seriously complicate the legal case if anyone believed it was legit. Elise's response was immediate. She requested a forensic analysis from a document expert, filed an evidence preservation order on HOA's internal systems, and subpoenaed Karen's email logs. Within 24 hours, we had confirmation. The document had been created on a laptop registered to Karen's HOA office. The signature layer was a direct copy of my permit. That was it. That was the line crossed. We forwarded everything to the sheriff's department. Karen was officially under criminal investigation, not just for trespass or fraudulent rental activity, but now for forgery, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud a public official. She must have known it was coming because by Friday she had disappeared from her house. HOA members said she'd gone on vacation, but Diego had already received tips she was trying to lawyer up out of state. Didn't matter. We weren't chasing her. We were building the wall that was about to land right on top of her. The cherry on top? Mayor Mitchell tried to deny everything at a local press event, claimed zero knowledge of misuse of public channels, and said he had no direct familial relationship with Mrs. Gillespie. 2 hours later, Diego aired a clip of Mitchell at Karen's niece's wedding, front row giving a toast. By the end of the week, state investigators were swarming the HOA offices, and I had an official call from the district attorney's office. We believe we're looking at an organized effort to misappropriate private assets under color of administrative authority. And we're taking this very seriously. I just smiled and said, "Took you long enough." The courtroom wasn't much. Pale green walls, an American flag sagging on its pole, and rows of worn benches that smelled like old varnish and anxiety. But the energy inside that room on the morning of Karen's first hearing? You could cut it with a knife. Elise and I sat at the plaintiff's table. She looked sharp, as always in a navy suit and cold expression mode fully activated. I wore a blazer for the first time in over a year. No tie. I wasn't giving the court more formality than it deserved. Across from us, Karen sat flanked by 2 attorneys, the kind who charge by the minute and bleed your soul through retainer agreements. She didn't look smug anymore. Her hair was tighter, her lipstick paler, and her face locked in that permanent grimace of someone who knows the tide has turned, and it's dragging them out to sea. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s named Judge Elridge, opened the session by listing the charges: trespassing, forgery, filing fraudulent documents with a public agency, wire fraud, unauthorized subletting of private property, defamation, obstruction of ownership claims, and finally, the civil complaint for damages totaling over $300,000, including lost rental value, legal costs, and property restoration. The courtroom was packed. Diego was sitting in the back row, notepad in hand. A few HOA members had shown up too. Some curious, others visibly nervous. No sign of the mayor, coward. Karen's lawyers tried to delay proceedings, citing ongoing jurisdictional confusion and a potentially prejudicial media environment, but Judge Elridge wasn't having it. "Facts don't get cloudy just because the news ran a segment," she said dryly. "Proceed." First up, ownership. We laid out everything: the deed, the marina registration, slip permits, the geo-survey maps showing my lot sat entirely outside the Lake Haven HOA boundaries. Every document had matching registration numbers, county seal stamps, and digital trail. Karen's side barely even looked up. Then came the video footage. Jesse had compiled a full timeline. Day 1, Karen breaking the lock on the dock gate. Day 2, hauling suitcases onto my yacht. Day 5, sunbathing with a margarita while blasting Jimmy Buffett. Day 10, accepting envelopes from strangers who later showed up again with suitcases. Then Elise played the footage from the hidden camera, the one from inside the yacht, showing Karen cooking, her friend vaping inside my cabin, and her teenage companion doing push-ups in nothing but boxers on my kitchen table. Karen's attorney tried to object to invasive surveillance, but the judge waved it off. He installed the cameras himself, on his own property. Overruled. Next came the forged letter. Elise brought in our forensic expert, a calm, gray-haired woman named Dana from the New Mexico State Document Bureau. She walked the court through the evidence. The fake property transfer authorization was created on a laptop registered to the Lake Haven HOA office. The signature was an exact pixel match to my permit application from 3 years ago, down to the resolution artifacts. Metadata showed it was generated 2 days before I had physically returned to the property. Elridge raised her eyebrows. "You mean this was manufactured in anticipation of a potential dispute?" Dana nodded. "Yes, Your Honor. This was premeditated forgery." Then Elise brought up the mayor. "We didn't accuse him outright. Elise was too smart for that, but she submitted the ethics complaint and the LLC filings, letting the evidence speak for itself." The judge scanned the documents, frowning deeper with each page. "Any response, Ms. Gillespie?" the judge asked, turning to Karen. Karen stood slowly. "I believed the vessel had been abandoned. I was told as much by members of the HOA board. I acted in what I thought was the best interest of the community." Elise cut in. "Was it also in the community's interest when you collected $900 per week in cashless rental payments into your personal account?" Objection. Overruled. Karen's voice wavered. That was reimbursement for maintenance. Elise, stone-faced. There's no maintenance. The boat was fully operational when you broke into it. Karen sat down. She didn't look back up for the rest of the day. The court adjourned after 6 hours, but the outcome was obvious. Judge Elridge declared there was sufficient evidence for criminal proceedings and authorized escalation to a full trial on both civil and felony charges. Bail was set at $50,000. Karen's attorneys looked like they'd swallowed lemon grenades. We walked out into sunlight that felt warmer than it had in weeks. Outside the courthouse, Diego approached me. "On the record," he asked. I looked at the camera and smiled. She tried to turn my yacht into a floating con. But now, she's the one adrift. In the weeks that followed the preliminary hearing, the pressure didn't just build, it detonated. The HOA board meetings turned into civil wars. Members were at each other's throats, demanding resignations, combing through budget reports, uncovering years of bizarre community projects no one remembered approving. A quarter-mile of fencing installed for wildlife preservation. It never existed. Monthly dock cleaning fees. Turns out Karen had been pocketing them for equipment storage, which meant her nephew's jet ski and a rusty smoker she left behind on someone else's lot. Meanwhile, my civil suit gained speed. Elise filed for an injunction to prevent Karen from accessing any HOA funds for her legal defense, citing misappropriation. The court approved it in 48 hours. That left Karen with two options: burn her own cash or beg the HOA for personal donations. Spoiler, no one donated. Jesse, our PI, kept digging. And what he found was almost cinematic. Karen had filed 6 fake abandonment claims in the past year alone. One for a vacant lakeside trailer, another for a canoe rental shack, and even one for a floating swim platform that belonged to a youth camp. Each time she used variations of her phony LLCs, Aquascape, Lakeline Management, Shoreview Cooperative Trust. She had been running her own rogue property acquisition program under the nose of the city. But here's where it got really interesting. The prosecutor added a new charge: criminal conspiracy, naming an unknown second party, likely someone from inside City Hall. While no names were officially filed, we all knew who they were circling around. Mitchell Gillespie. The mayor had been silent ever since the media hit him with that wedding footage and the leaked emails. But behind the scenes, he was fighting like hell to stop the investigation. Elise had sources in the AG's office. She told me, "He's trying to claim all these transfers were administrative misunderstandings, no criminal intent." But the AG wasn't buying it. Not after we handed over a document Karen tried to destroy. A printed copy of an HOA resolution giving her permission to convert my dock into a shared recreational asset. The problem? The HOA board never saw it. The entire resolution was fabricated, date-stamped, and signed only by Karen and one M. Sir Gillespie oversight advisor. Elise slid it across the table to the prosecutor. "Intent enough for you." Suddenly, this wasn't just about my yacht. It was about fraud, municipal abuse, and the slow rot of small-town power games. The state launched a joint investigation. AG's office, local sheriff, zoning authority. They raided the HOA office. Then they raided City Hall. Karen's face was back on TV, now accompanied by headlines like, "Mayor under scrutiny in expanding Lake Haven fraud case." New Mexico HOA president faces RICO-style probe. Yachtgate, small town, big trouble. Karen tried to play victim again, releasing a statement from her lawyer saying she had no intention to deceive anyone, and that community resource confusion was to blame. But by now, public sympathy had dried up faster than a rain puddle in the desert. Then came the final gut punch, the plea offer. The DA's office offered her a deal. Plead guilty to trespassing, forgery, and misuse of public documents. Avoid prison time in exchange for full cooperation against unnamed co-conspirators. Pay restitution to me and 2 other property owners. Karen rejected it. Elise nearly laughed. She still thinks she's going to win. Honestly, I wanted her to reject it. I wanted her in court. I wanted the truth dragged through the mud for everyone to see. And then, she tried one last move. Karen's lawyer filed a counterclaim, alleging that I had, in her words, orchestrated an unlawful defamation campaign, that I had used my financial resources to weaponize the media, and that the yacht was, at one point, discussed as a donation to the HOA under community improvement initiatives. Elise was ready. She walked into the next court date with a folder labeled Fantasy Files, screenshots of HOA newsletters, emails, and texts showing Karen had crafted that narrative only after getting caught. The judge didn't even let her team finish. Counterclaim dismissed, sanctions hearing scheduled. Karen blinked like someone just slapped her with a salmon. The courtroom cleared. Her lawyer didn't even look back. Outside, Diego was waiting with his mic. "Ryan, any thoughts as we head into the final trial?" I gave him the same answer I gave myself every time I drove past the gate that still had Karen's keypad mounted on it. "Yeah, I don't care how long it takes. She doesn't get to steal from people and walk away." The trial began on a Monday morning under a gray sky that looked like it had already made up its mind. It took place in the Haywood County Superior Court, but it felt like the country was watching. By now, the case wasn't just about a stolen yacht. It had become a story about power, corruption, and how far one woman could go with a gavel, a fake LLC, and a twisted sense of entitlement. Karen Gillespie sat at the defense table, no longer trying to look confident. Her skin looked pale under the fluorescent lights, her smile was gone, and the only person beside her was a second-rate public defender. Her former legal team had dropped her after the counterclaim fiasco, and the mountain of evidence Elise had dropped like a sledgehammer during discovery. The judge, the same Judge Elridge, didn't waste time. The prosecution started with the timeline. Karen had entered my property without permission, replaced my gate with her own digital lock, claimed community control of the yacht using forged HOA paperwork, collected cashless rental payments using fake agreements, filed a false police report alleging I was the trespasser. Then came the digital trail. Emails between Karen and M. Sir Gillespie showed explicit planning to reclaim assets near the lake under the pretense of abandonment. Karen referred to my land as prime conversion real estate and the yacht as public access ready. One email included a spreadsheet of potential future transfers, 5 properties, none of which were under HOA jurisdiction. Each entry had projected weekly rental revenue. Next came the big blow: the handwriting expert, the digital metadata analyst, and finally, the county land registrar, who verified that Karen's HOA maps had been deliberately altered, and her submissions were never accepted by the county zoning board. Every leg she'd stood on was kicked out from under her. Then Elise called me to testify. I took the stand, swore in, and laid it out plainly. What I saw when I arrived, what I found on the boat, how I was made to feel like a criminal on my own dock. She said I was trespassing, I told the jury, on a yacht I bought outright, docked on land I own next to a house I paid for in full. She looked me in the face and told the cops I didn't belong, like she'd rewritten reality and expected everyone else to fall in line. Elise turned to the jury. "Mr. Strong, what would have happened if you didn't have the surveillance footage, the documentation, the funds to hire a private investigator?" I paused. She would have gotten away with it. And for a moment, the courtroom was silent. When the defense tried to spin Karen as a misguided community organizer, the jury didn't blink. When they tried to argue that she'd been misled by internal paperwork, the judge interrupted. "You mean the paperwork she personally forged?" The trial lasted 3 days. The verdict took less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The court sentenced Karen Gillespie to 6 years in prison, 2 of which were mandatory due to forgery and wire fraud statutes. She was ordered to pay restitution totaling $332,000, not just to me, but to the other property owners she defrauded. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She just stood there, stone-faced, as the cuffs clicked into place, and they walked her out through the side door. The moment the door shut, a kind of silence filled the room. Not relief, not triumph, just clarity. Outside, reporters asked me for a statement. Elise gave them the legal rundown, the no comment on the mayor line, and the usual formalities. But when Diego found me by my truck, he asked a different question. What now? I looked out over the lake. The water was calm again. My dock was clear. The yacht, scrubbed, polished, and rearmed with a new digital lock and 4 separate hidden cameras, bobbed gently under the early afternoon sun. I rebuild, I said, and next time someone tries to set foot on my deck without permission. I pulled the cover off a small sign bolted to the yacht's entrance. Private vessel trespassing, toppers out, prosecution. Don't be like Karen. We both laughed. Later that evening, I drove back down the trail and replaced the keypad gate she'd installed with the original wooden one I found rusting in the shed. I sanded it, painted it black, and bolted on a new sign. No HOA zone. We don't rent to thieves. Funny thing, a few weeks later, I got a letter from a new interim HOA president, apologizing, inviting me to a community reconciliation event. I framed it and never responded.